So, I'm Teo Montoya. I'm a 2-4 mental projector. Only two channels I have are the 1762, very unconscious, and the 1156. So, that's my design. I trained with Human Design Worldwide and was mentored by Jagruti Bernert. She was somebody before, if you know any of the good old history and politics, I'm sure there's a couple of you here, before like IHDS really got established after Ra died. She had been working on a lot of the rave psychology work and had built, was working on that, the diversity or the...
Can you say her name one more time, because you told me?
Yeah, Jagruti. That's what she went by. Yeah.
Jagruti. I've seen her credited in the IHDS materials. 2008, 2009, was that around the era?
Yeah.
Around... Okay, sorry. I've just been editing a lot of these materials for those who have talked to me outside of this.
She was a very similar similar manifestor to Ra, and Ra used to be jealous of her because she had 11 first lines and he only had 10.
Oh my God.
So that was always fun to
I love that.
hear about that. So that's kind of my, I think in any system of knowledge it's really important to go back, like figure out where it's coming from, figure out that lineage. And for me it was not through IHDS but through Human Design Worldwide, which was Martin Krasinger and Ilse, I'm forgetting her last name. Yeah, Ilse Sendler, and she does amazing VG5 work and is a great cross-planning. So yeah, so again, I'm Teo, 2-4, mental projector, I'm writing Across of Eden, 12th Sun, and I really wanted to talk, I've been deep into Jung recently. I don't know if Ra would approve. I think given the dream rave work, he was not really a fan of him, but maybe he was in other places.
Jung was a 2-4 as well.
Oh, okay, great, yeah. 3420, I know that. And yeah, I've just been fascinated with the archetypal systems for a long time, and the mystical way was something that just immediately grabbed me the second I started learning about it, and just saw it as the place in the system where so much of our, especially Jung's work, but a lot of psychological work and individual sort of awakening work is really founded in, right? And Jung's process of individuation, of moving from the collective, bringing shadow in, moving through initiation, and stepping into yourself and bringing that self back, and this closely resembles the hero's journey as well, as Joseph Campbell laid out. And so it's been just a fun thought experiment for me, and I'm also taking this as an opportunity to go full 1762, so we'll see what just pops out. Unconscious 1762. But yeah, with Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, I just had such a fun time putting these two together and just seeing the connections and the references. So I figured it'd be great to just run through the mystical way and talk about it, open up some dialogue, spend some time thinking about individuation and the self and the power of the 10th gate, which I think is, so many parts of the system are built on the lines of the 10th gate, and yeah, just see what we can discover, because for me, I think this is the fundamental question of why people come to these systems, why people come to archetypal systems, come to human design, is because they're trying to individuate, they're trying to figure out who they are, get rid of the conditioning, disconnect from the collective. And the thing I want to kind of end with is the importance of bringing it back in your full unconditioned self, and how, of course, some people's designs, you could argue they're not here to bring it back, they're here to, maybe they'll get invited or something, but they're on their own journey. So yeah, I just wanted to start with that, and yeah, so please, if there's questions that come up or things you want to share, let's open this up to discussion. It's my favorite way to do it. So just starting with the 1949. So we know the 19 is coming out of the root. I'm a teacher most of the time, so I'll go kindergarten a little bit on you sometimes. But
I need it. I'm like got that gate 3.
Nice. So with the 19, we know that as the pressure of the root building, pushing us towards need. And right away, knowing that it's part of the tribal circuitry, it immediately goes to the needs of others, the needs of our community, the needs of the tribe. But as we know with both these root gates going into the community circuitry, the 54 and the 19, there is this sort of mystical aspect of them. There's something that goes beyond the need or the blind ambition for the material or the need of just a community. And that is this transformant, transcendent aspect, right? And that is what I will call during this just like the numinous. And in the 19, we not only find the need for connection, connecting to the community to get our needs met, the contracts and balances and everything that come into that, but also this deeper need that is fundamentally unfulfilled, just living a tribal life, right? Just, giving to the family, just being in connection with one another. And there's always been, throughout all, tribal societies, there's always been these people that transcend the community. They are these deep individuals. And as we know, the tribal community, or the tribal circuit, loves individuals as long as they abide by the tribe, which is a fun little hook for us. But there's always room for the individual within the tribe. And in the mystical way, I think that's where we can really see how important it is that the individuals exist within the tribe. Because the tribe's so fixed, right? It's like really trying to keep itself safe, excommunicate the wrong people, keep out the outsiders, genetically keep it safe. And without individuals crossing the threshold, getting outside of that community, and bringing back their individuated selves, the tribe would become stagnant. And just as much as safety is found within confinement and limitation, adaptation is found within individuality, within the mutative aspect of individuality. So having these individuals in the community leave, all this comes from the root. The root is the great driver of the ego circuitry. Of course, the ego's there, but most of the channels in the ego circuit and the tribal circuitry it's projected. It needs energy, right? So it doesn't have it. And it's often a problem, and almost everybody with those gates coming out of the root just work way too hard, even though they're, it might be projectors or some of those things. So with the 19, providing that pressure for need, and within that pressure is also the need to be connected or disconnected from the tribe, right? So everything starts in this 19. And then moving to the 49, that's really where we get the awareness, right? As you know, the fuel doesn't know anything. It's just this blind pressure to go towards something. And it's in the 49 that we develop the contract, we develop the marriage, we develop the divorce. We know it as revolution. We know it's what gives us the drive to disconnect from the tribe when it no longer meets the needs of individuals or parts of the connection, or parts of the groups within the tribe. So that 49 both connects us to and disconnects us from community, from the tribe. And that goes naturally up to the 37 and the 3740. And the 3740 within the mystical way is the least mystical, right? It's the one that is as little mystical as it could be. This is about what'd you do for me? Did you scratch my back? Did I scratch your back? What's going on here? And my joke that I tell people, I was like, I love the idea of universal love and relationship, but if somebody's not doing the dishes, there's no love. That is not, it is tit for tat all the way.
I'll do the dishes, I really don't mind.
Well, as long as I can do something back for you, and then we can work it out. But that,
easy, mundane,
yeah, 37
I
mundane
can do
is the word.
mundane.
But also it's the power, right? These are two motors connected. This is what keeps the tribe together. This is what keeps the tribe accountable. This is what keeps us relational, and we're relational beings, even as much as we focus on individuality and human design. We are here to relate. Individuality is useless if there's nobody else to be there. We learned that very clearly in the 4130. If you die eating the mushroom and nobody knows about it, it doesn't help anybody. Right?
Nobody learned.
Yeah, nobody learned anything. So with that 3740, just really tying us down, I think every teenager, and when you look at the hero's journey, you see it as this movement when we are crossing thresholds in our lives, when we're expanding our sense of self. So when we look at teenagers, when we look at people who are starting to understand who they are, truly separating from the mother and the father and the paternal, this is the process. And the 3740 is all the confines of the bargains and the contracts, they all get pushed to see where are the edges of the self and where are the edges of the tribe and the family unit here. So it's within that 40 that we find, and I always like to remind folks that, the ego is the self as much as the identity is the self, coming from, it's got that I-ness to it, right? I own, it's mine, me, mine, all those things coming from the seventh center being connected to that identity. And it just cracks me up that the 40 is this deep, deep place, this deep paradox of I'm me, and I know what I can do, and then the hook of the 37 keeps it indentured, in a sense, keeps it connected to the family. And the family has to give that back, has to recognize that, right? We have to know, you have to know in the family who's the provider. That's what the 40 holds, and the provider gets the extra privileges of getting to rest when they need to rest, right, in a very traditional way. But that 40 is the first step away. That 40 is the first step to actually claim what we want, we desire. We don't know necessarily what that is at the time when we're developing or stepping towards something, but the 40 is the first sort of call that we experience. And if we look at the hero's journey, I mean, it's separated into, like, you can look at different models and be 20 different parts, 3 different parts, whatever it is. But the way I look at it 4 is that we have the ordinary world. And that's what's established with the 1949, established with the 37. And it's the 40 that really brings the call towards maybe the self. And it's the 51 and the 25 that pick up that call, that take on that initiation, that take on that shock. And you can look at every single fantasy, sci-fi movie, and it's always the farm boy who is totally happy, like, I'm going to be a sheep herder for the rest of my life, this is great. Then something happens and they resist it, they don't want it, they push away from it. And then they get initiated. They get initiated into a new world, they get initiated into new powers, or just something beyond themselves. And something I like to remind with the 2551 is just, this is where we meet God. This is where we meet the universal love, the innocence of the 25. When that is transcended, when that is shocked, we reach the edge of who we are. And when we reach that edge, we reach the void. We reach the universe. Yeah, the abyss. We reach, possibility.
Like freedom.
Yeah.
It's freedom.
Things in there.
There's no there ain't no rules anymore.
And that's terrifying, though. Can we agree that there's times when we reach the void or the abyss and we're like, I don't want to be here. This is way too much. Do I have the capacity to meet this? And if you have an open ego, maybe you don't. You know, if you haven't entered into it correctly, maybe you don't have the capacity to meet that void. So in the hero's journey, moving from the tribe, moving from the ordinary world, hearing the call come through that 40, come from this deep place within self, I won't call it the self, but within that deep desire of the heart that they want something more. And then, as we know, the ego has 2 ways to express itself. We can either go full material, go full 2145, let's master this material world, or we can go to 2551, which is deeply individual. This is about the centering of the self. And I like to think of the centering circuit as this sort of, these cantilevers on the boat of the self, you know, like what's keeping us in balance, what's keeping us there, and the power of the 3510 initiating, or powering us to be ourselves, to find self-trust and self-love.
3410, right.
Yeah, 3410. And then the 2551 initiating us, keeping that spark going, bringing us into bigger areas, bigger seas, bigger edges of life. So the 2551 has forever fascinated me. The only gates that I have in the mystical way is the 25 and my moon. And I love Ra would joke, he said, the people who are the most interested in spirituality are people who have nothing in the mystical way.
Daddy is such a tease, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, and it's because, what do we look for? We look for those things we don't have. We're so attracted to the parts of our body, because they're in us, but they're, you know, we don't know what they are. We have to find them. We have to find wisdom around
Gotta
them.
meet the reflection.
Wisdom
Well,
around them. I like
plus,
that.
like hanging gates within that, wouldn't that also really try to pull it?
Well, let me tell you, from a 25 to 51, there's times when I wish it wouldn't pull it into my life.
My moon's at 51.
Sure.
Is it? Okay, well, we can't hang out too much, but it's good to know you.
But you might be perfect.
You never know.
You never know.
But-
Well, if everything's binary, you don't know if the electromagnetism can create harmonic or disharmonic. Right?
Electromagnetics are magical
Oh,
and problematic, and they're pretty much everything, right? But
Well, I have a 36 sun and a
you know,
25
it's like,
moon, and
I love the feeling.
it's a lot to handle sometimes, that electromagnetic, pulling that in.
I'm used to feeling it.
But that 5125, I really, like, the hero's journey is found in all of our religious stories, our cosmologies, our the creation stories, all of those things come around these experiences in which they've stepped into more. Somebody, some prophet, something has
Somebody
transcended,
gotta do it.
has been shocked, whether that's through death or through a faux death, into something larger than themselves. And even the Buddha story, I think often of the 25 and the 51 there, of when Buddha left the castle where he'd been, safe and protected from all of the evils of existence, to come out and have that innocence, so completely shocked. And then to go from that shock, which most of us endure on a daily basis, to a transcendent thought, to a true seeking of something larger, going just that opening. I see that as the second leg of the mystical way. But again, all of this is,
Ra's encounter with voice.
and he's a 51 son, We were talking earlier about,
25,
yeah.
51 son and 51, 25,
and he absolutely. And this is the place where we're initiated into deeper understanding. And we'll get more to the 1020 now, but that is just presence. We know that's just, it's like hard to describe to people. I try to describe to people who are new to human design, like what this channel means at 1020 or anything connected to 20, and it's just it's so hard to explain to them. Like this, it's just being. It's just presence, in that 20. It's just this, you are you, and you can't even see yourself until you recognize that you are you. It's kind of this paradoxical experience of being yourself. But that 2551 just catches me every time of how important that is to the human condition, to individuation, to this process of finding ourselves. If we do not have the will or the shock, the energy coming from the will to become more, we don't become more. So this energy to me is really part of the process of, even when we turn towards systems like human design, what we're seeking. We're seeking that shock. And of course, Ra has the 2551, the 51 in his son. We talked about his shocking language, And I love that because he was a fifth line, I'm like, thank God he used shocking language, because that was his, persona that he brought out into the world. So he didn't have to deal with all the people going, well, I don't know about that. He would just shock them and they'd be like, I'm out. I'm not interested. Not my thing, not my
Find out real
fractal.
quick.
I have a really good one. This isn't so much about mystical way, but
I love it.
So I'm a 25. Both my parents are, 51. So I've lived with 25
Same.
my whole life. So I have a friend who's a 51. Another friend who's 51. So she's a psychiatrist, psychotherapist. My friend's real Jungian, introduced me to Jung, actually. And so, when they first met, he goes, oh, I hear you're a psychiatrist. Yeah. So I was abused as a kid by my gym instructor. Actually, a lot of my other people in my class were too. Most of them committed suicide. She goes, really? That's really common with child sexual abuse. Yeah, it really is.
No big deal.
Within 2 minutes of them talking, this is what they did, immediately started with. 51s lead with this. And yet, with that 25, they initiate us into things. This is the guy who initiated me into Jung. He shocked me into, this is the world we're in, he roused my spirit, you could say.
Yes.
Thank
No,
you, gentlemen.
I love that because I think we seek out the shock. We seek out these things, especially when we're in these stagnant places. Like I said, I have 36 sun and this 25 moon in the, I forget who, was it Kate? Is it Kate or Katie who was here last? Sitting here talking? Amy, sorry, I totally butchered that. But I was just talking about how do we present things to people, and I love bringing the positive in, but I know that it's not shocking enough. It is not shocking enough, unless, as you were saying, they've lived it. They've lived a very difficult life, and they're like, none of this positivity has been in my experience at all. That might be shocking enough, but you have to give them something shocking. They need that to step into self. They need that to step into identity, into finding, hey, this is who I am. This is where I'm at, even if it is a conditioning from somebody else. But you got to sample that. You got to figure that out for yourself, right? So when we're approaching human design, we're giving human design readings, there has to be that shock in there. Like I truly believe, because I think all of us come to it again on this journey, looking for something more, something larger than ourselves. And I think that's one of the largest drivers of human beings. And I think within that is sort of meaning of not only to experience something larger than ourselves, but then to spend the rest of our lives going, what the fuck was that? Like, what was that? What did I just experience? What was beyond that? What was in that void? And that's why I love Ra's shocking speak, even though I will say, don't, if you're new to human design, probably don't read Ra right away because you're going to be turned off if you're not
Don't
like.
listen to him.
Yeah.
With the image and everything, yeah. And I go back and forth. He's so juicy.
Well, that's why
He's so
I can't.
cold and he's so juicy and real. I love real. Right?
It's
He's
very real.
And that's why I love Ra, because it's real.
But the like reading his transcripts of his things,
Yeah.
I can't stand it because I'm like, this is meant to be heard. This is not meant to be read. He repeats
Exactly.
himself. He goes on. You know, he holds this space so that he can create more shock, and that shock is what initiates people, and that's why it's so powerful. And again, human design being
Presence, being there. You know, that's why aura. That's why we're doing this. It's the aura, because without it, it's beautiful. I felt aura through, you know, other ways. I can feel a lot, right? I feel, but this is way different.
yeah.
I like what you were talking about, the hero's journey, so it's really interesting. A few years back, I did some videos about this, because I was like, it was hitting me. I was in the throes of my abyss. I was in the dark night of the soul, and everything was like crystal clear. And it was like, okay, Jung, human design, And I really want to talk about, maybe have you expand more about the call, and about what happens, because it's almost always that the call comes and there's a refusal of the call.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's how the ego works.
That's how the ego works. But then there, you know, what I have noticed, kind of as I've met more people, run more charts, seen some lives, just listen to stories about their lives, is that the refusal of the call over and over again, the call just keeps coming back stronger and stronger and stronger until you break or you relent and go on the damn journey. So you can expand more about, like, you know, what about the call, like how do you know when you're being called?
Yeah, I love this because, like I said, I mean, it's partially my experience, but the 36 to me and the 25 have just so much in common, or those channels, right? The crisis and the call and the shock and all of those things. And, you know, the cyclical nature of the collective abstract, right? Of coming back to things over and over and over again until the lesson's really learned. I kind of feel that there, but as you were talking, I was thinking of the ego. It doesn't make a move unless it knows it can make a move, right? Like the defined ego, the healthy defined ego, is like, I'm not going to do that shit until I know I can do it the best way, the fastest way, the way with the least energy possible.
It's going to hurt you otherwise.
Yeah, and
So it's all
take you off
about,
from-
you know, what it's going to do to your form, because your form is your vehicle.
and discerning, do I even want this, right? Is this
Yeah,
something I
there's
truly
no
even desire?
personal.
And those calls from the 51, I think they can be so overt. And like I said, I think all of our religions and the religious experience are trying to create a sort of call, a sort of shock to the system, a sort of state of like, oh my God, I'm standing on something that's much bigger than myself, and I'm intrigued, and I'm going to take a step towards it. And then there's a bunch of people on the other side with a bunch of books and a bunch of words going, see, this is what it's going to all be about, and you can spend the rest of your life doing this. But that call can come in so many different things. It is just, I can't even begin to describe all the ways that it can show up. It can show up through, obviously if you have the 21, it's going to show up through other people. So often it's going to show up in the transits. But it comes to us in all kinds of different ways. It's not just somebody coming along and being like, Harry, you're a wizard, you know?
Frodo was
But it could.
But it could be that easy. It could be that simple.
Yeah, and I think as I heard you talking, like, first of all, you're talking directly to me about the cyclical nature of this bullshit. Okay? But no, it's a fun ride. But it is about that. It can be shocking, and it seems to be where your concept of normal reality, like something plays with it, and you're like, well, no, this is. You mean I've been living in this, and this is not what I thought it was. And so it's kind of like that. So I'm hearing you. I have the things you don't like, but I'm gonna hang out with you. I'm just gonna follow you around.
That's fine.
I'm just on Instagram.
We have to. We can ration. That's fine.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'd like to share like a little bit. So I have gate 19 and an undefined root. I have the whole channel, that's conscious. The 40 and 37 channel is fully conscious between defined, solar plexus, and ego. And then I have 21.
Mm-hmm.
So 21 is like managerial, but it's also along the money line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so alchemizing finances and learning like my business has been major themes as to like my life. I'm almost 36, like there's been this true essence of learning to alchemize my spirit, my mind, my body into creating material success for myself. You know, so I mean, I don't know. I feel like that I mean, and I'm conscious of it. Like, you know, I see these patterns clearly in my life. Major life themes, major lessons coming through, all connected to that.
Yeah, I think well, alchemy is so found in the 4426 and the 4426. 21's looking at everything in the material way, which is 4426 and
Yeah.
the 5432.
Yeah.
32. And alchemy is manipulation of the material, right, of the material world. And again, it's funny because like the ego goes two different directions. So when I think of alchemy, we think of
It's like,
we go to chemistry, which is true manipulation of the material world, and then we go to the psychological or the psyche, right, which is alchemy in the way that Jung used it. We're using the same exact concepts to manipulate the material world, go towards this sort of this inner, this self, right, going towards the self with capital S. So with the 3740 and the 19 there, and that 21, it to me it's like, but my first reaction to hearing that is like, you're going to be so connected to how does the community bring in the resources, right? 3740 also knows what resources there is, particularly the people, you know, the other people that's part of that. But yeah, I mean, it's all about trying to figure out what the community does, and the spiritual aspect of it isn't going to necessarily be something. It seems like that's the thing that comes after. For you, it's going to so naturally come out of the 2145. I don't think that they're separate necessarily. You can see the ways that they are talking about alchemy, right? But yeah, that's my immediate just reaction to that.
Yeah.
So.
I had a couple of keynotes. I remember this is back from the very Cosmology materials. I just want to say, if you want to continue on from the 2551, and as a 25 myself, the keynotes that always kind of stood out to me. So when I think of the 51, when I think of it, I mean, the spleen is really intelligence. That's cold-blooded. Cold-blooded intelligence. The ego is the first one to shoot in one of those Tarantino movies. Anytime there's what they call the Mexican, or maybe New Mexican standoff, we can say, there's somebody who shoots first, and that's always the 51. You know, I'm the 25. I'm like, don't shoot. You know, but I just kind of wanted to bring in a couple of the keynotes from that, because that is what it takes to kick off the spiritual. It is jumping into the void. It is going into this dramatic thing, and throughout most of history, in the seven-centered history, that was actually the killing field. And the keynotes that Ra gives us for the 51 is the bastard, and for 25 is the bitch. So I'm the 25. So
You're the bitch, huh?
I sure am.
Yeah, that's really that's fascinating.
What to say? It's really.
I just wanted to shake it up a little bit.
No, that's good.
Really,
No, I feel that. I get, there's so many times I'm trying to get away from the void, and somebody just pushes me into it, and I'm like, why did you do that?
Stop shooting.
Well, that's why my mentor, Jagruji, she's a 2551 as well, and she's a manifestor, she's a sphinx, so it's like you can't even walk within 5 feet of her before you're like, I guess I'm going somewhere completely different. I don't expect any of that. I don't know. And she said 2 words to me. She's like, "Give me a pack of cigarettes," and I found my love at the grocery store. You know, it's a total trip.
Okay, I was going to just do a quick announcement. Anyone who gets a chance to corner John Cole, he's a second line, so you really got to push. But I met him. He's expanded my network so much through his unconscious fourth line. I met him in 2018. He's a 2551 ego projector. And the amount of people he's initiated into human design, if you're a newbie at all or anything or interested, just go to him, because he is the initiator par excellence.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I love this energy so much. But yeah, so from that 25, from that call, which is, you know, the call comes in through the 51, the 25 refuses, the 51 figures, the 51 knows it has the energy, the ego energy to do it. So that's where this initiation happens. This is where we are initiated into more, right? And we reach that edge. And it's really the capacity of the ego to actually meet it, to actually stand into it. And as you know, the vast majority of us are walking around with open egos thinking that we should do 10 times more than we're even capable of doing. We get, pulled into all kinds of things because we think we'll get the little pat on the head that makes us feel like we're self-worthy.
I don't think anything.
Oh, that's good.
That's
good.
No, I'm not thinking. My body needs to move. It does things. I'm getting more discerning about where I allow it to go, but bottom line is,
you're above me. Like I said, I'm a mental projector.
I'm a lot older than you,
There
at
you
least twice your age.
I always say mental projectors, we have to learn to be good with hypocrisy. It's like I can talk about this stuff all day, whether or not I actually successfully do it.
I love
That's
it,
up to the
though.
rest of you, actually, if you guys will allow me to get to
It's
it.
wisdom. Thank you for it.
He's like on a track talking
Yeah,
about
I'd love
something.
to like
So you
hear
guys need to
his,
stop
like,
interrupting him and let him do his thing.
Yeah, I'd love to hear
Well,
his process.
I do appreciate that, and I have 2 hours to fill, so potentially. So, but I will get to the 10:20. I know that's what's going there, but I'm gonna let her speak
No,
first.
the only reason I wanted to mention something because as you're speaking, I'm sorry, I am getting a lot of really amazing insights, and you talk about the 51 kind of trying to push and the 25 refusing. So when we were talking about how both of the identity center, the G center, and the ego center are both I-ness, but one is like, I don't like lower self, higher self, but do you know what I mean? One is, and so it's almost like if you go to meet your higher self,
That's your trajectory
this
too.
is that what the call is really trying to go and make you go to find your higher self. 'Cause that's what the journey eventually brings you to.
You have that higher other thing going on too, your
Well,
sound thing.
And yeah, so I would agree with that, and this is a really important point, is that the 25 being connected to the identity connects us to our trajectory, that connection to the magnetic monopole, where we're supposed to go in this life. And this goes back to with the open ego, so many people are jumping into these initiations after initiation. They're seeking initiation. They go do all kinds of ceremonies, they take a bunch of plant medicines, they jump into new religions, new concepts, new systems, all because they're waiting for the right time to actually get that hit from the 51 to step into, hey, I'm trying to be my fucking self, and I'm looking out here everywhere else looking for it. But that's part of the process, right? Differentiation is about seeing that you're part of a collective and then separating from that. So I'm a little bit, I'm bitter, obviously, but I just see so many people go in the system.
bitter person I know.
Well, you could give me a couple more pickle shots, and I might start being a lot more bitter. But that process, I'm glad people are seeking it, and it does happen. And it's just so funny because on the other side of that isn't all of this knowledge, isn't all of this systems, right? That's all conditioning again. Even us entering in human design, this is why I'm like, okay, great, you're learning human design with me. It doesn't fucking matter. You're doing a strategy and authority, right? I'm so glad that you can tell me all of your environment and everything. I'm like, yes, you're like, I'm in a cave room. I was like, have you waited for an invitation your whole life? Probably not. They're stepping into that, and especially with an open identity going like, well, I'm just going to try on all these hats, all these different costumes, all these different, things to see if they fit. And then the big cosmic joke is that through the 1020, you just are yourself, and you're just presently yourself in that moment, and most of the time they're already there, right? And this is where the 20 is, the recognition of being yourself that's the joke, because you don't even know that until somebody else points out, hey, you're being yourself, because it's projected most of the time. It gets at 34 sometimes, but projected energy, the 10. You don't even know you're yourself until somebody invites you into being yourself, right? Or recognizes you as yourself. And I think that's where we get to this point when we start learning all this information. We're putting on all the hats. We're trying to find our identity. We're trying to find our connection. And that's when we actually get the little taste test. When we step into the void, we reach the edge. And we're like, oh, okay, there's a lot more here. I'm going to go try to figure all of that out. And you spend the rest of your life doing that, and you never just become present with the moment of I am all of this. I am universe love. We're all the same. This is that cool love. I'm literally just as important as this piece of leaf on the floor here, right? And then, thank you. They got a lovely 25 down there. If I kick them, they'll get to feel that, right? So this is, in that journey through the heroes, through individuation and the hero's journey, when we reach that 10, and the 10 is the basis of all our profiles, the lines of the 10, this is the behavior of the self, which is these specific roles that are found through the hexagram, right? These 6 specific ways we show up to this Maya, this whole thing, right? This plane. And with that 20 and that 10 being there, that's when we just actually have contact, right? And so in the hero's journey, this is when we've gone through the abyss, we've met that edge, we've gone through the abyss, we've answered the call, right? And we have that crisis that's right there, right? When we're trying to figure out, what does all this mean? What is all there? Until the moment that it's like, I'm already here. And it's in that already here that you've taken the reward. You've taken the golden apples. And the golden apples is just presence. And I remember like thinking of all these meditators and stuff, and I'm a defined mind. I was like, fuck that shit doesn't work for me. I can't turn my mind off all this stuff. And then it just kind of occurred to me as like, they're just harnessing presence. They're not concerned. Maybe they've already gone through the 2551. Many of them might be meditating still from that place of, I'm just trying to figure this out. But ultimately, they're seeking that present being. And within that necessarily, within that is connection to all things with the 25, that deep, deep innocence that I am no more than anything else. And all material has the 25, right? It has a connection to that, and that's how we interface with the material. So I just saw that this hero's journey, when we reach that point, we come back. And sometimes I'm bitter again, and I see people seeking the transcendent. And really, they're just hoping that as they seek the transcendent, they have a shocking experience. They have something that makes them feel something as if they know who they are, right? And they might even get to the point of presence, and then they just want to hang out there, And yes, we can talk about, what can we actually do? Or do we have any will, right? Do we have anything? Well, the heart would like to say yes, right? Is this all determinate, But what I love about the hero's journey is the journey back, right? If you were an individual who had this entire thing, yeah, go for it.
So I was just gonna say, so then is 10 still, for the hero's journey, like still in the pit?
So 10 is when you've found your, 10 is when you've become yourself. And then 20 is just this present factor. So it's like impossible to talk about the integration channels separately from the rest of the gates that are there. So it's always like every time I try to explain like what the 10 is the 10 is the 10 and the 57, the 10 and the 34, the 10 and the 20. So in this case, the 10 is self. And so you found yourself, but yourself is also just beingness, is presence. So
Quick example, when I follow my strategy and authority, when I follow my intuition, into really showing up for myself and speaking up for what I want, all of a sudden people are like, thank you for speaking up for or thank you for saying something, thank you for honoring yourself. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess, and mine's unconscious, so I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I did that.
Yeah.
That's my experience. Yeah.
This is
I'm just, because my point in the hero's journey, we're all about the climb out of the pit, so I'm just kind of trying to see how this all relates. That's really where my mind is tagging.
And then there's no pit is kind of
Yeah.
Well, and there is a hero's journey.
So, Ron went through 200 charts, and he went through all the different mystics charts, and pretty much always at least had one. It was really
a lot of 54 too.
But for him, if you do his keynoting, it's in his poetry of keynoting. It's really beautiful. He has the end of it. His last 4 gates. So so if you were to keynote that, he is. I mean, if you introduce his structuring and so on, he's structuring the, initiation into awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time you're at the 10, you're at the precipice of awakening right there in front of the 20.
And this is where it's kind of like the causal versus the determinate causal experience. It kind of hits a paradox where it's like when you are yourself, you're just part of this whole thing too, as much as you're yourself. So it's kind of, this is where who with the 1020, Rock wouldn't have had to bring it back. If he just had that, right? Like the integration, they're not worried about anybody else. They're not worried about sharing it. They just, if they happen to get seen, then maybe somebody will glean some of the mutation that's there. So he talks about the 19 that he has. I forget which line he had it in. But how that was part of the reason, he talks about the 41. He talked about the 41 with that.
Well, because and that 40 was the kind of, mother of, look how much I do for you, look how hard I work for you.
And the 41 he was in, the third line, which is always seeking somebody to come along on the journey, right? Somebody to experience and feel what he's had. So he had this sort of thing about bringing it back, right? And what is a manifestor without their impact? And that's the thing that I think is really important, is that what do we do when we get to individuation, when we get to ourselves, and when we start to become present with ourselves, which I don't think there's an end goal. I think it's just a incremental experiential thing. And that's where I think bringing back the golden apples, like in the hero's journey, bringing back what do we find in that presence. And then the hilarious part is that you can't just bring people to that. They have to go through the whole process themselves. But that's where it's just sort of this cycle in the mystical journey of going back, finding that need within the community. The tribe necessitates that individuals go out and bring back knowing and awareness and presence and whatever they find in that journey, moving out those challenges. And when you think about people who are exalted within tribes, not hierarchically, that's the other way the ego goes, 2145, but the healers and these people that come in, they bring unknown things, right? They bring things that people don't understand. And that's the very hook. And part of what they do is try to work people into being themselves, right? And when you think about a body functioning, it is correct, right? When it's doing its thing, it's correct. So, yeah, I think that's mostly what I have here to posit for you, is like, can we look at the mystical way as this individuation journey without getting caught in the getting stuck right at the 2551 and being constantly seeking something that gives us a shock so we think we know ourselves more. But what happens when we get to that presence? What's there? What's on the other side? And that's why there's these enlightened masters, and they literally just go sit for a long time. And maybe that is useful. Part of me is maybe a little too seven-centered. I'm like, bring it back, dude. Bring something. We got a lot of suffering going on here,
It wasn't until you mentioned that I thought of Marina Abramovic. I don't know who knows her. She's an avant-garde artist. I mean, her quote, if I could leave you with a quote of hers, is that the bedroom should have a bed and music, that's all. But in any case, she did The Artist is Present, where she would sit for
right across from
10
the other
hours
person,
a day,
right?
and then this is it.
And yeah, these experimentations. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that for you all, and just something I've been thinking about a lot, and also just realizing how big of a conditioning force it is on all of us, especially so many people don't have these gates, and how much they're seeking it. I'm not trying to chide anybody for seeking the spiritual life, but to understand what is at stake and what's there and where it's coming from that need to find the numinous that's here, and just really reckoning with what it is.
It's in the dirt.
Do you think that some of the draw to it has to do with the solar plexus mutation in process? Because I would think the mystical would align to that more as an awareness center.
I think that that's new, and that's individual, and that's mutative, and that's deeply that doesn't give a shit about the tribe, Here we're talking about this.
Breaking.
Yeah, it's breaking, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was kind of curious, what the draw is or what's
And I was going to
happening.
mention also the door is closing on mysticism. I mean, we're doing this now. I joke, I have gate 9, line 1 activated 3 times. I joke I'll never do human design in 6 years because I'm not going to be useful anymore, because part of what we're in is this time of the curtain being pulled back.
And moving into that individual existence, which also always has the 59. So it's not like we're not connecting with each other. We're connecting with each other. There is connection, but
There's tribal, there's just no collective. It's the only incarnation cross of all of the incarnation crosses of the collective.
So this is where, for me with the 25 and the 36, I'm always thinking about, what are these places that people are stuck? Where are they, when you work with the experiential way in the 36, you just realize that so many people are needing they need a crisis, they need to confront their emotions, they need to be with them. I kind of poo-poo this whole idea of screw emotional. It's I'm not emotional, y'all are bringing the energy here, I don't want this. I'm no, you probably deeply need some wisdom around your emotions, and you haven't connected them at all. But that, for me, it's very clear that that's part of what I'm here to do, is to help people move through that. But yeah, after that point, there's going to be a lot of people freaking out, so I'll have plenty of work, but that's not,
Projectors are so smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the 4037 breaking and all that.
So this is the hierarchical relationality and the tit for tat and the I scratch your back and you scratch mine, and this is the glue that's tied us together. This is the glue of capitalism, in a sense. Capitalism is also found in the material way, which is much more about manipulation, but here is where you agree that hey, if I give you money, you're going to give me the product. You're not just going to shoot me right afterwards, right? That's where the 3740 is. So that falling apart, because that's where we've been in the cross of planning, is what resources are here, who does what when, what's possible, right? That's what the planning is all about, is figuring out, finding that focus, finding the correct pattern, and then using the resources of the tribe to facilitate that. And look at the world we're in. You know, as I'm well aware of the shit, and also the innovation, right? So when that dissolves, I don't even know. Like people ask, like, what do you think? What's gonna happen? Well, what is it? I'm like, I have fucking no idea. I have no idea how it's gonna look. I can't even conceive.
I think we're already seeing it crumble on the edges.
Oh, we've been seeing
We've
it
been
crumble
seeing it,
my
and
whole
it's really
life.
interesting because we talk about this shot. Like, I feel like the hero's journey is like, applicable at so many different levels for the collective, for everyone. So just some of the things that have been crumbling since the pandemic. It's just been really interesting to see technology glitches, seeing infrastructure issues, just really all of this falling apart. It's already crumbling. I'm from Detroit. I can guarantee you, I've already seen the crumbling.
Yeah.
Coming off the cross of planning, you know,
Exactly.
that background theme of that 3740s also.
Yeah.
Falling apart.
I grew up in a ghost metropolis city. So really imagine a city that's 30 to 60% empty.
Yeah.
Very strange to see that. And I see the blight spreading because Japan is 30%. You can go buy land and homes in Japan now because they're, the way that capitalism, the way they were working themselves, they weren't having children. They have not replaced the population. The old people go to prison on purpose just so they can get taken care of. And it's empty.
Yeah, I think about infertility all the time and the mutation, and how much we're seeing that from ecological, which is all part of the mind.
And even behavioral, like.
Does that have anything to do with the 3740, like fertility?
That's mostly found in the 59.6, but you know, the solar plexus in general is relational. So, I mean, yes, yes, in that, like, if you put out a baby, it's a resource, you know, that kind of way. But
Well, I was just going to say also, we just did a Locks and Keys talk, which will be online soon, but I was going to also say that 3740 going away, I mean, that has been the defining, just like 3420 will be the defining characteristic of the future, because anytime you find a channel in an incarnation cross, it sort of dominates the theme of that cross. And the theme of the past 400 years has been the part seeking the whole. And that's gone away. We're no longer seeking. I mean, I have friends who just want to be a part of something bigger than them. That's all it is. And there's this gusto, this gust of wind behind being a part of something bigger than you that's just going away. People are not going to want to be something bigger than them.
well, but so this is where, you know, because I'm a deeply, like, actually hopeful person. I know I sound cynical sometimes, but this is why this mystical way, the hero's journey, which is the journey of individuation, we don't need individuals that are unconscious. We need individuated individuals, you know. We need people who are living correctly as themselves to move into this next phase. So it's not as if the mystical way is some useless pastime of anything, right? It's like, it is the necessary step to actually enter into this correctly, because from the, imagine, and this is what's the unique connection between the 59 and the 55, is that the 55 being finding that right spirit, finding that right mood, finding the people who are correct for you emotionally, who are correct, you know, before it's, I don't know what it's going to turn into, but that's what it is. And the 59 being that space of deep connection, union, two become one, right? And to me, it's like, if we don't have people entering into relationship correctly as themselves, it's just going to be shitty. It's going to be hell, you know. So
More shit for the show, right?
So right now, I want everybody, like, what can I say that's shocking as possible, so everybody gets a little shock when they get out of here, so they can start working on that, because the individuated nature is what's necessary. It's not that it's a scary thing. Evolution has always happened. It's scary because we don't know it, but that's what's at the other end of the 25, and we can only enter into that correctly, right? So
It comes to me as a science of differentiation, not the science of disconnection.
yeah, this is the thing, is that again, the individual is nothing without others, right? Like, it doesn't do anything unless there's another to receive it. Mutative is useless if there's no other to receive the mutation. So I don't see, yes, it's individual, but it's also deeply connected. So I don't know. That's how I like to look at it,
I hear
because
that.
It's also
what
the
keeps the
difference
entities
between codependence and interdependence. Codependence is when two
Absolutely.
people never individuate and become themselves, so when
And
they
they're-
are in, they have
and they're playing out
difference.
collective.
And they play out the and they'll put up with a lot of really, really negative, toxic behavior and stuff, and so relationships would become toxic if you're entering them without
And
individuating
you're making
first.
toxic babies,
May I ask one more question?
ultimately.
You did mention about the journey back.
Mhm.
So, with the journey back, and listen, we've all watched movies because they use this as a formula to write
Oh, yeah,
stories
that's
and
a-
movies. It's
I'm
so.
I'm a sci-fi writer, and this is like
I'm a
this is it.
sci-fi reader. Boom, I'm telling you. But if you think about like how the storyline always happens, they're on the way back. They've got the successful thing. They got the golden sword. They're glowing and shit. They look amazing. And then there's like a last test. It's almost like a last test of character. Like, have you grounded into this frequency of yourself? I'm really speaking about this today because I am actually experiencing something like that right now. And I was literally these 3 lectures in a row have touched me so much. Your these things, because I needed it. Like, it was here, but it's right in my face from people I trust and love, and I can trust this outer authority right now, and it's really feeding me. But I really want, if you can expand on that, like, because the journey back isn't smooth.
Oh no! Well, can we talk about Frodo for a second? Frodo is fucked up. He has PTSD. He's sitting there with what 7 fingers, and he's like, I can't stay here.
Yeah.
Right? I can't stay in the Shire. This is beautiful and this is wonderful. I can't stay here anymore. I'm not this anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't even come back. I brought it back. The world's saved. But I can't even enjoy that. So also this journey is the deepest form of loss that we have because we're relational. And the only thing that is useful is when we're in relationship and sharing who we are. Right? We're nothing like that's how we're
So
received.
big.
And that's
big. Thank
one of the
you.
biggest issues of the open ego is that like we need affirmation from folks. And I like to I think everybody's great when they're like, you're amazing, like you don't need anybody to prove you. I was like, I'm sorry, if you have an
wanna
open
bet?
ego, you need your pats on the head to even
Oh my
know
God.
you're valuable, to even know you're worthy. And then you can build from there. But yeah, afterwards there's no it might go unseen. And there's no guarantee. With individuality, mutation does not land. Sometimes mutations are shitty, you know? So maybe you go
Like,
through
look
that
what
journey.
You became this monster, and that was the monster you were supposed to be. That's, you know.
Isn't that fun?
One of the things I had to come to with human design is that if I was going to really embrace differentiation, I had to embrace it all the way, which means
Right on.
the things that I could potentially have judgment or disapproval of. Like, I have amorality in my chart though, so I see some wild shit and I don't care. But literally just having to be like, okay, it's gonna look every kind of way. It takes all kinds. It takes all kinds, and therefore I'm looking at something and it's not what I am, and that's the gift.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty, is to be able to see it. Even just to see it. Recognize it, witness it, hold it, you know.
And it's kind of this space where we can't enter into something we know is doomed, right? Like, why the hell would we do that?
Exactly.
So we have to have some sort of meaning. We have to have some sort of purpose for stepping over that threshold into something more, even if in the end that meaning is not true or is not received or is not wanted. And I think that's a risk any of us take when we go on the spiritual journey, is that, like, is this even useful? Why are we doing this? What's here? And I think there's going to be a wave of apathetic spiritual people in the next 10 years that are just like, what was that all about? Why did I go after that? What was I seeking? Because they never came to that point of presence of 10. They were just following the teachings and teachings and teachings. But you have to follow the teachings to even get past the threshold. Like, that's the meaning that allows you to go, I'm going after something. You know, so, and I see that all the time. I get that way plenty. You know, I'm like, why am I doing this again? Why is this happening? Oh yeah, no choice. But it's...
Oh yeah, it makes
And that's exactly it, the no choice part, like getting the experiential version of that, not the, let me think about what no choice might look like, but really recognizing this all was going on when you got here, when you got born into it. Everything was just, you know, in motion, and it's up to you to be like, at this point I've been pushed enough, and perhaps maybe I'll seek myself.
And on this journey, it's not like we're experiencing it purely as individuals. We have our whole body graph. We have we're finding patterns along the way. I love thinking about the crossing consciousness of how do our experiences become our patterns, how do our patterns become our experiences, right? And that, as we're going on this journey, we're finding patterns. We're discovering ways of being that are useful and innovative and productive, or whatever, all this right angle cross planning stuff. And then we're going through experiences that can bring wisdom back. They can bring, so one less person is suffering because they know that, oh yeah, I read a book about this person going through something similar and I have a reference to now work through that myself as a human being. So these things are needed, but still the end goal being individuation. So yeah, I'm curious if anybody else has any reflections or anything.
I fucking love the mental projector experience.
We're-
Let's just hear it for Teo.
I can actually let it in. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you.
I have a little announcement. So we're going to have at 8 p.m. I hope everyone will be here for Carolina Mama in the Kiva room. Carolina flew all the way here from New York. She's a singer, she's a manifester, that defined throat, and an incredible performance with Jocko Foster on guitar. Not to be missed, that's at 8 p.m. This is my only announcement. Other than that, we're pretty open today, so if anyone...
There's not the DJ thing at 6.
Oh, Liliana, I don't know if she's getting going yet. I don't have time, but she should be there. I mean, Liliana's playing some opening tunes.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay.
So you get everybody moving, In case you didn't have a pickleback.
I didn't dance last night. I didn't get to the
Yeah,
rail
well,
yard. I was so sad. I
Yeah,
tried.
please. I'm down to still talk it out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about.
Instagram.
Very careful walk.
It's like John.
No, I need to find him on Instagram. So I can follow him. Yes.
This was donated back to us
Exciting.
because it couldn't be run on plans. So we're so proud of those. Oh my god, okay, I knew you'd have somebody else. Whoever you have.
I was just curious, what would that?
I haven't bought it. Probably since I
I feel like trying to think of communication it's not like it's a thing that happens.
No, I never sort of found that long. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know. We don't know what it's going to look like exactly.
Amy Lee started.
Which
I was looking at
She was really
for your
interesting.
period is starting with that fifth line with that 12.
I'm totally gonna have to show you a picture of who won my adolescent best friend who looks so much better.
What you're here to do is
Even the length of your hair, is it natural? It's not straight to it, unless you straighten it or
it's like you come in.
it's Brianna, but I'm gonna have to grab her on my
Like part of that
hang out life stuff, but it's still
you have to find you're gonna find a new way. You're always gonna be a contrarian. Not contrarian, but you're gonna go against the grain.
Yeah.
And your hope is to take them with you. That's very much it.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that. I've always felt that, just because, I'm so against the grain. I don't like listening to anybody.
And that's the hard part with the 21 in that is that
You have the 21 in your
I
mood?
have a 45.
You have what?
I had a 25 and
Oh, okay.
for you the difficulty would be can you, especially with the other individuality now with the 3420, can you play the game? Can you get behind the power, can you find power and be a part of it? Or are you going to just be, this community is important to you, and it's important for you to find community, but it can also be easier in chart to just reject community often as well.
Oh, totally. That's what I've done the last 4 years, and I've witnessed my body being super fatigued.
So you're meant to be. This is the difficulty of the 21. Is it's very much got a Saturnian energy to it, where it's like you have to abide that the community brings you everything you want, usurp it. You have to gain the trust and rise in the hierarchy to be in control. And with the 21, you might not ever be the one out front, but you're going to be the one working with resources all the time. And people that have individuality with this cross find a huge difficulty because it's too much conditioning to be with the community or the tribe all the time.
Oh yeah.
You know, you're like, I don't want that, I want to be myself. And then the very Saturnian lesson is, okay, but I need them, so how's this going to work?
Yeah, totally.
What am I going to give them? And it's fun because then you don't have to hold on to any sort of notion of selflessness. You just have to be like, okay, they did something for me, I'm going to do something for them.
Yeah.
That's all it is. I'm not just giving myself for service,
Yeah.
you know, which doesn't fit individuals. It's really got to have that basis.
Yeah, totally. That's interesting because like my mind definitely goes into the kind of like the tit for tat type of thing. Like if I make dinner and if I'm cooking all day long, I don't want to do dishes. Like I'm not washing dishes, you know. Like so it's interesting because like for me, the question came up yesterday or a couple days ago about like manipulation of like wanting like feeling as almost of like that it's like a manipulation of the situation that goes on. Okay.
That's what that is.
Okay.
Big part of it.
Yeah, because it's like, because for me having experienced like kind of chronic fatigue the last 3-4 years, but me having removed myself from community, right? So I maybe wasn't able to integrate things. My body and my mind are like, what can I create and manipulate in this situation to create comfort for myself, so I can fucking relax. Like my Gene Key life purpose is or life's work is to relax. It's divine will.
Yeah. and that is the Saturnian reality of the community that is so hard. I hold some of that too, where it's like I have a ton of 45, which is the energy on the other side of 21. Where it's like I don't want to do anything, I just want to be the one in charge. I don't want to do any of it. But and you can't do that unless you have something to give, and it has to be valuable enough to other people that they're like, yeah, you can rest because you give us so much more.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You know, and that's always the difficulty. And for you, it is going to be this difficult line between the individual and the tribal within your chart, because you need to find something that's purposeful for you, that allows you to be yourself, that allows you to be self-expressed, and you can't get rid of that part of you, and at the same time it has to be valuable enough to the tribe that you are connected to that, so you get the opportunity to migrate to fulfill that purpose. It's a tricky energy. It's a funny energy. Yeah, the manipulation is such a fun thing to get underneath any of the conditioning around it.
Yeah, totally.
And when you just see it straight up for what it is, it's like not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
and it's done all the time everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's useful even.
Yeah.
But it's weird how we have a resistance to that energy.
Yeah, there's it's interesting because like I see my tribal energy. I have like 3 bags that I bring of food for my dog, all of her set up, and I bring extra food all the time. I'm thinking about like when somebody is like, they're having a hard time hearing across the room, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna walk across the room and go shut the door because they're you know, like, so I have that like, oh, let me take action first, but then now I'm getting really present to no, whatever I need to do to fill up my cup, to honor myself first is like the most important before.
Oh yeah, that's.
But I have that drive, like, let me do these things to almost like win the tribe over too.
Well, that's the 19 and the 49 too, of like the sensitivity. They do know what they need. Yeah, you want to win them over. You also want control. You want the resources that are there too. So that's part of it. But yeah, you have to be careful with your open spleen, because that's a place where you can just exhaust yourself. And this, when you have an open spleen, it's just so like, I'm jealous of splenic authority. So like, if you can tune into that, you don't enter into things incorrectly, you know? And with an open spleen for you, it's going to be hard to make that judgment call all the time of like,
What is correct?
what is correct, you know? And yes, you can follow your sacral authority, but the sacral authority you have with the 3420 being unconscious, it's just like, it just happens.
Yeah. Sometimes I just take action and I'm like, what the fuck did I just do?
I think the thing that's important about that one is realizing it's in that moment. It's not like some, you know, be in that moment with it, be present with what action's happening. That doesn't mean the action you take, if you jump up to serve the tribe in some way, that doesn't mean you're going to be the one on the line for 6 hours straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So whatever I'm inspired to in that moment.
Well, then we can pick up the. I don't know if you guys are like done. I just have a question.
I just wanted to wrap up with the open spleen, like if you don't mind, like sharing a little bit about that, like, cause like for me, like I'm a fertility and pregnancy health coach, epigenetic health coach, so it's almost as if like I am showing up to guide people through their health, and this is definitely how I can pick up on energy, you know, and attention, you know, from like what's going on in other people's bodies, at least my wisdom and awareness. And
absolutely. And the thing is with the 2 gates you have, so the 28 is the fear of like being purposelessness, like having purpose, like not having, and it's also a deep attunement to what the physical body needs to feel strong. And then the 44 holds a sort of ancestral memory of all of the negative things that could happen. So it's almost like you hold within your system the fear of the ways that the tribe has died previously, like an ancestral connection to death, right? And so holding those fears just makes sure you attend to everything that might possibly could happen.
oh yeah,
And with the 21, very good at that.
oh yeah, totally.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, the open spleen is just,
Okay, cool.
it's a beautiful thing. Be deeply intuitive, but just not by yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Not for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you.
Yeah,
Like, thank you
absolutely.
so much for all your like wisdom and
Totally.
sharing. Like, love your perspective, man.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
So I was wondering where you guys are friends with